I'm so excited about today's topic, which we actually started last Thursday, the interpretation of dreams. How do we do that? And if you're fishing for last week's video, it's somewhere lost in cyberspace, maybe, or perhaps being reviewed or something, we don't really know. But kind of a fun story from last week, if you didn't get to join us, is we were chatting about, how do we figure out what our dreams mean? And a guy hopped on, and for his privacy, I won't share his name, but he was a senior in high school, and he just said, I just had a dream that I believe was from God, even though he didn't personally follow God. And God was telling him in his dream that he was willing to help him to have wisdom to know what to study in college. And so he just hopped on and said, is this possible that God could really be pursuing me, even though I've never followed him for 18 years and I'm sure that I've sinned? And man, that was such a fun adventure to walk out with him. We actually ended up praying together to just ask God for further revelation of what he should study, since he was already hearing God in his dreams. And it was so cool because God totally just spoke to him right then and there and encouraged him to pursue geology, which had always been his dream, but he had been, just like many of us, afraid that maybe he wasn't smart enough to pursue it. But because of God speaking to him right there in that moment, he had the peace and courage to move forward and the clarity. So that was super fun. I'm so happy that he was able to join us, and I can't wait to see how that walks out for him. But today, if you have a dream that you've had tucked away in the back of your mind or the forefront of your mind that you've been wondering, what does this mean? This feels weighty. This feels significant. I can't forget this dream. I can't shake it. If you have something like that and you want to have it potentially interpreted today, we will do our best. Then you can post that in the chat later on. I'm by no means a dream interpreting expert. I feel like I have some tools though. And so as I'm learning and growing in this, I'll share with you what I have and we can figure this out together. But it has been so just, I feel like receiving these tools recently, because I went through a school the beginning of August through Bethel Church, I feel like receiving these tools has just opened up further revelation that God had been trying to give to me through my dreams at night, and gave me an empowered sense of feeling of, these don't just have to be weird conversations I have with friends or my husband of like, well, that dream happened again, have no clue what that means. But I can actually take it to God and say, what are you trying to tell me through this? Even if it's not a dream that's necessarily from him, it can give me some indication of what's going on in my soul, or what are my fears, or what's my destiny. And so that's been so fun. It's really felt like a breakthrough to get to actually begin to interpret these things. First, I just want to start with a scripture that's in Acts chapter 2, verse 17 through 18 in the Holy Bible. And I just love this verse because it is saying what's available to us, what God has done. And it says that in the last days, meaning the time since Jesus came to earth 2,000 years ago, in the last days it shall be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even on my male servants and female servants, in those days I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below. And that passage continues very powerfully. But the point that I wanted to get across is that God is pouring out his spirit still today on all flesh, on every human being. And he is just constantly speaking over us, sharing his heart with us in so many different ways that we've actually covered in previous chats, if you want to check out any of those videos we've saved. And dreams are just one way that he's speaking to us and pouring out his spirit and revelation over us. And in this, don't get caught up in the particulars where it says that the sons and daughters will prophesy, the young men will see visions, the old men will dream dreams. I don't believe that that's saying that only old men will dream dreams. I believe what it's trying to indicate is that whether you're young or you're old, whether you're male or female, whether you're rich or poor, it doesn't matter your race or anything like that, that over all flesh the Spirit is poured out, and we all have access to all of these gifts of prophecies, visions, dreams. And so that means that your dreams could actually be meaning something. So, hey, Kay, it's so good to see you. I'm so glad that you could join us. Kay is a friend of mine that I made when I actually spoke at her university in New York in March. And she is just a treasure. She has such a sweet, sweet spirit. And she stuck around after I finished speaking and helped me pack up my suitcase. And we were able to have a one-on-one lunch together. And she just has such a beautiful heart. And so Kay, I'm really excited to be with you in this way today, and hope that that if you have any dreams that you've had, Kay, that you'd like to have interpreted today, like, this is why we're here. So just feel free to type them up and shoot them over in a comment, and we'll look at them if you'd like to do that. So yeah, basically, I think that sometimes interpreting dreams could have a bad rap. I know even I had some concern about, can we really interpret dreams? Can we really know what they mean? And I just want to encourage you that as you look through Scripture, try to count how many times God speaks to somebody in a dream, and keep a running list of all of those key fathers of our faith who God spoke to through dreams. I mean, I was thinking of Joseph, and then Pharaoh, and Daniel, and Nebuchadnezzar, and Abraham, and Jacob, and Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus. I mean, even the wise men, it says that the wise men, that God warned them in a dream not to go back toward Herod, but to take a different route home, right? So speaking through dreams is actually a really common way that God reaches our hearts. I think because our brains are still, like our bodies are still when we're sleeping, and we have our guard down, and God's just able to speak right into our hearts, maybe with less resistance than when we're awake. And so there's that. But then also, if you remember when God spoke to Joseph in a dream and showed him that his brothers were actually going to bow down to him, when he shared that dream to his brothers, to his family, he didn't interpret it for them. He just said, there were you can go back and read it for yourself about the stars and the moon and the grain, or the wheat heads, but he just shared the symbol that he saw in his dream, and his family was able to hear that and instantly know what it meant, which means that there was a culture of interpreting dreams in the Bible. There was a value for interpreting dreams that the fathers and mothers continue to pass down to their children. And I just feel like it's been lost along the way, so that's why we're picking it back up. And Kay, yes, that day was truly amazing. I felt like that was such a divine gift from God to get to have that time with you. So when we look at your dreams, the first thing you may want to ask yourself is, was this dream from me? Was it a body dream, a soul dream? Was it from God? Was it demonic? And some of the ways we can know that is, we'll start with body dreams, because those are some of the easiest to identify. A super embarrassing example of that would be one time 15 years ago or something, I had a dream that I needed to go to the bathroom. Have any of you had that dream before? Yeah, so you can imagine, in my dream I really needed to use a restroom, so I walked into the girls' restroom of my high school or wherever I was in the dream, and you can fill in the rest. And so yeah, that actually happened in my bed, because I was so convinced in my dream that that's where I truly was. And so that's an example of a body dream. where something physically is happening in your body and your dream makes sense of it. Or maybe you've heard your alarm going off, and in your dream there start to be sirens going down the street in front of you. And so instead of realizing you're hearing an alarm, you're thinking that it's sirens. Or maybe your arm falls asleep, and so you dream that it got cut off or something like that. So that's a body dream. You could also have a soul dream, which is basically, maybe it's not necessarily a dream from God trying to speak to you, but it's your own soul telling you, like, this is what I'm longing for, or this is what I'm afraid of. This is what I need. This is what, maybe I'm afraid of abandonment, or I'm afraid of unfaithfulness, or whatever it is. So then you have dreams about that. And so those dreams can actually be an indicator of what's going on in our hearts. Then there are, of course, God dreams, which brings some sort of life and revelation from heaven to our lives that gives us a higher perspective than we could have just seen with our natural eyes. And then there also, of course, can be demonic dreams. And since I grew up not knowing that there was a God who created me and loved me and made people so that he could have a family, I didn't know any of that about him the first 10 years of my life. And so the first 10 years of my life, I mostly every night had demonic dreams. And so I can, blame that on the types of movies I used to watch with my grandma when I was 2 or 3 years old. Lots and lots of Chucky and Freddy and Jason movies, all the horror movies. And so as a result, I had horrible, horrible nightmares almost every single night, all the way until I met with Jesus when I was 10. And it didn't just stop immediately when I met Jesus. It actually stopped when I had my stepdad come into my life and say, that shouldn't be normal. You shouldn't have to have those dreams every night. Have you ever considered not watching horror movies? And honestly, the thought had never crossed my mind, because I didn't realize that the things that I was viewing, the things I'm looking at, I'm choosing that. And when I choose to focus on something, to watch something, I'm actually not just watching it from an outside perspective. I'm opening the doors of my heart, because whatever I look at can come into me and have permission to come into my heart, because that's what I'm focusing on. So of course I just was flinging wide open the doors to the demonic by watching all of those horror movies. So those are demonic dreams. So at this point, if you have a dream that you'd love to interpret, you can send it this way. But in the meantime, and feel free to send that at any point today. But in the meantime, I'm just going to share some examples of dreams I've had, what they meant, how I interpreted them, and show you the step-by-step tools that you could start using even today if you have a dream tonight when you go to sleep. Yeah, Rachel, you don't watch horror movies often. Images get too stuck in your mind. Yeah, they would for me too. I mean, I still can replay scenes of movies that I saw when I was 3 years old, 4 years old. It's just so important that we pay attention to what we're feeding ourselves with. And I've even been teaching my children this. They're only 4 and 6 years old, but sometimes my son might have a bad dream and he's telling me about the villain in the dream, and it's somebody that he watched on a TV show or something. And so then I ask him, do you want to keep having that villain come into your dream? And he's like, of course not. And so then I explained to him why it has the right to, because that's what he's been entertaining himself with. And then he made the decision that he didn't want to keep watching that. But he didn't know that he had the power to decide. He had the power to choose what he would put into his heart. And it reminds me of that proverb. It's this ancient piece of wisdom that's from Proverbs 4:32 that says, above all else, guard your heart, for this is the wellspring of life. And so I'll just share with you for fun some dreams that I've had, and you can start to learn from these examples how you might be able to interpret your own. And you can even share in the chat box, like, Do you feel like you already are an expert at interpreting your dreams? Do you feel like you have no clue what to do when you have a dream? It doesn't usually mean anything to you, but sometimes you feel like it should. Or do you feel like sometimes you know and sometimes you're totally in the dark? Where are you currently right now when you're thinking about your dreams? And just to give credit where credit's due, a lot of what I'll be teaching you today, I learned from a pastor at Bethel Church out of Redding, California, and his name is Ben Armstrong. So he was one of my teachers in the school that I attended early August, and so this is what I learned from him. I know he has books out there and courses that you can dive into deeper if you like what you learned today and want to grow in those skills. I haven't yet gotten any of those books, but I've felt definitely empowered by what I've learned so far. So an example of dreams that I had that I knew were significant, just thinking back, I remember when I was dating Mark, my brother was about to get married. I think. I don't think he had mentioned it yet, but he had a steady girlfriend. And in my dream that night, I could see like we were on the highway. It was a car crash or something. And so no one was injured, but we were stuck on the side of the road, and my brother was following behind us. And he gets out of his car and he starts racing toward me. And my brother didn't look the same as usual. He was very pregnant. My brother was pregnant, and he just had this huge belly, and he was coming to make sure I was okay. He didn't tell me anything about his belly, like nothing like that, but that was the end of the dream. And I just knew my brother's about to have a baby. They're pregnant. And the funny thing was that Thursday after I had that dream, we got together for a little family get-together, and my brother and his girlfriend announced that they were expecting, and that was the first time they had told anyone. So that was a fun dream, where I just felt like God gave me a little heads up of what my brother was about to share. And another example would be, let's see, so when my father passed away, he had left me a business to manage, but I had a property manager who was helping me out while I was finishing college. And I went straight from college to Uganda to serve orphans as a volunteer teacher. And so I was just communicating with this property manager through email only and getting her monthly reports and all of that. And as I was in Uganda, I'd maybe been there for about 5 or 6 months. And I started getting dreams that the property manager was stealing from me. And I would wake up and I would just feel like, oh, that would be terrible. Oh, and I kind of just had this knowing that it was probably true. But I didn't want to believe it because I was supposed to be in Uganda for 9 months. I did not want to cut my time short there to go back and deal with this corruption in my business. And perhaps I should have, I don't know, but I just kept ignoring the dream. And, maybe a couple weeks later, I'd have that dream again, that my property manager was stealing from me. And so finally, it was time for me to go back to the States. And as soon as I met up with her, we had a chat over coffee, and she started feeding me the same stories that she often did right before I left. Stories that I used to believe, but that suddenly I had revelation to understand that she was just making them all up. They were all just lies and excuses. So I was able to fire her and find another property manager, cut my losses to the tune of $10,000. But I'm so thankful that God gave me that perception and that alertness that I didn't have otherwise, because I sincerely had no reason to not believe her stories until I had those dreams. So it's just an example of how God can share something with us that would be helpful for us to know, because He is our Father. He sees everything. He's looking out for us. He loves us. He cares about us. And so I bet there are times like that you've had dreams that have meant something to you, that God was simply trying to maybe warn you of something or bring something to your consciousness that wouldn't have otherwise come to mind. So isn't he just beautiful? Isn't he amazing that he does that? I'm going to take a moment to see what all Rachel has written here, because I always love what she has to say. So Rachel says, I feel I can tell what my dreams mean a lot of times after I look more into the symbolism of things like colors or animals. Also, thinking about my emotions of what I'm feeling in my dream helps me lead me to what I feel it could mean. I have a lot of animals in my dreams, like bears and dogs are the most common. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like, Rachel, that you already have a lot of natural intuition that's been helpful for you to interpret your dreams. And yeah, many of the things that you just mentioned, like looking at the feelings of the dream, are going to be part of the very beginning steps of how we're going to interpret dreams today. So, and lots of bears and dogs. I'm curious, like, yeah, I'd be curious to hear some of your bear and dog dreams. I've had some dreams, not with dogs, but with bears too. Actually, there was a bear dream that was very impactful to me. So there are dreams like that that warn us about something. Sometimes dreams can also give us resolution that we've been looking for. When my father passed away in college, that was probably one of the hardest things I'd ever faced yet in my life, because I was close to him. He was the most meaningful adult relationship that I had in my life at the time. And I just loved spending time with him. He would come to campus and pick me up twice a week and take me out to lunch, and we just talked about everything. And he was also going through a difficult breakup of someone he had been engaged to. Basically, he was about to propose and had been dating her for at least 5 years or more. And so he had shared his heart about that with me, and we had just grown so close in vulnerability, which, if you knew my dad, like, that was not his strong suit. He was really great at looking like he had it all together, because he was very successful and competent, but he did not easily let people in. And so I had the privilege of actually having access to his heart, and God was doing so much in that relationship. And then all of a sudden, he passes of a heart attack when he's 50, and I'm a sophomore in college. And I didn't see it coming, because he was so strong and he was fit, and he would get up at 6 a.m. and go work all day long on houses that he was flipping. And he was just very active and seemed healthy-ish. I mean, okay, let's be real. He wasn't actually eating vegetables or that sort of thing. Maybe iceberg lettuce with a whole lot of ranch dressing. So the diet could have definitely improved. But I'm just saying, there were no warning signs that he had anything wrong with him. Like, he didn't even go to a doctor. He just would occasionally get adjustments from a chiropractor. So all of a sudden, he's gone. And my heart was not prepared for that at all. and I just felt like, oh, I had all these dreams of things that my father and I were going to do together, and conversations we'd have, and it was done. All those times that I had looked forward to just were at least temporarily on pause. And so I started dreaming every single night that my dad would just show up in a dream. And, you would think that'd be comforting, but actually it was more conflicting and confusing than anything, because he would show up in a dream and just be like, oh yeah, I'm not really dead. I just, my business just got too stressful, so I faked my death and moved to this small town down the road. So yeah, I'm still alive. And so none of it was true. It was just him showing up, me not being willing to let go, and trying to figure out what to do now. And one day I just told the Lord, I don't want to have any more dreams of Dad showing up and giving me some crazy excuse of where he was. I was asking God, I'm like, God, the biggest turmoil in my heart right now is that I don't know that my dad knew God, because we had talked about so many things and he had just begun to let me into that corner of his heart. But he would more ask questions and listen rather than divulge his own thoughts about that when it came to Jesus and God and the scripture. And so I didn't know. I didn't know if he had received Christ. I didn't know if he had trusted him to be his Savior and if he was in heaven or not. And so that was my biggest struggle of, God, why would you let him pass before I would know that for certain? Because I had been praying for my dad every single night since I was 10 years old that he would meet Jesus. And I wasn't sure if that prayer was answered or not. And so I asked God for one final dream. And that night, sure enough, I had a very significant dream. That was probably one of the very last dreams I've had since about my dad. And what happened in the dream was I was in a hotel room because I was about to go on stage and conduct this beautiful orchestra because I studied music education in college. And so I'm all dressed up in a beautiful black dress and I'm conducting in front of the mirror at the hotel room and just in the zone. And all of a sudden the door opens behind me and my dad comes in and he's all dressed up. Like, if you knew my dad, he usually wore t-shirts and worn out cut off jean shorts. And so the fact that he was there in a suit and a tie, like he was just there for the occasion and there for me. And he just came and he had this big bouquet of flowers and he gave it to me and he said, Heather, I am so proud of you. And I just hugged him. And then I said, Dad, wait, before you disappear in the stream again, would you please just tell me where you are right now? Because I know you died. I know this is a dream. And my dad looked at me with these loving eyes and just this understanding, this tenderness, this sincerity. And he said, I can't believe you don't know. And I said, well, Dad, you never specifically told me that you received Christ. Like, I know we went to that movie called The Passion of Christ right before you died. So I know you had seen what God had done for us and made available to us by sending his son to reach us. But Dad had never said a single comment about that movie. All he said after that movie was, well, let's go to Kroger. What do you want for breakfast? Bagels or cereal? Like, that was Dad's response to hearing the gospel of what Jesus did for us. So in the dream, I said, Dad, I don't know where you are. Tell me where you are. And he said to me, I'm in heaven. And I said, Dad, how can it be? That's amazing. But I didn't know that you ever invited Jesus into your life. And Dad said, after you took me to that movie, The Passion of the Christ, the movie that my dad tried to cancel and not go to last minute because it had subtitles, but I was able to get him to go anyway because he's a sucker for deals and I had secured some free tickets from a campus ministry. So Dad said that movie, after that movie, he had actually privately prayed and given his life to God and received Christ. And he said, I never told you yet, Heather, because I didn't want you to expect some grandiose change in my life immediately. And he said, but I just want you to know where I am. And then he disappeared and the dream was over and I never saw him again. So, just another example of God speaking directly into what my heart needed to hear through a dream. Such a gift, so beautiful. Thank you, God. So Kay says that she has dreams with owls. That's fascinating. I've never had an owl dream. And Kay, you said that your dad passed at the age of 45, your freshman year of college, from a heart attack. Yeah, I remember chatting with you about that and really feeling a connection to you in that way. I'm really, still sorry to hear that. That is such a loss. And I remember your tattoo about it. And I just pray that God continues to comfort your heart in ways that your dad would have, and that he continues to be a father, a very real and present father to you, that Father God is that in your life, even stronger than maybe he would have been, or than you would have experienced him had your dad still been alive, that he uses all of this crap from the enemy for good, as he promises to. So Rachel and Kay, if you want to share, like, Kay, what do owls usually mean in your dream to you? Because I've not had owl dreams. And Rachel, do dogs and bears normally mean something to you? I'd love to hear any of your thoughts about all of that. You two ladies seem like have a lot of great intuition when you're looking at your dreams. And so this is just going to be a tool that you can use to apply to dreams in the future if it ever feels muddy, or that you can use to help others interpret their dreams, because maybe you don't have that same soul connection to a friend's dream, but you could literally just take your whiteboard or piece of paper and do what we're doing today and walk away with some revelation about what your dream could be saying to you. Like, I just had a friend and her husband come over a few weeks ago for dinner, and she shared that she had a really impactful dream the night before, but she was still processing, what does it mean? And it felt really foggy. And so literally right there at dinner, I just grabbed a whiteboard, started writing things down from her dream according to what Ben Armstrong had taught us in our dream interpretation course. And it was so fun at the dinner table, just having her husband, my husband, and she and I participating together to interpret this dream, and have her be able to say, that really resonates with my soul. Yeah, that feels like that's probably what that is. And that she just had some sense of, I feel like she walked away with a sense of God sees the loose pieces in my soul right now. And he was encouraging her through the dream so that the anxiety could be dispelled. So I just love that. Like 10 minutes later, boom, revelation. So Kay, you said the 2-year mark is coming soon since he passed. That's really, yeah, that is monumental. You may be having dreams around that 2-year mark, and I just pray that they will be God dreams, and that they will be dreams of encouragement and hope. And Rachel, you said, I can't remember specifics, but I know that I'm usually running from something within myself. Insecurity and shame from some of my past experiences. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I relate to that. And Rachel, I believe that as God continues to heal parts of your heart that feel like they've been damaged by an intrusion, then these dreams are actually going to disappear, and they're not going to haunt you anymore. And so he has that further healing for you. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, because I've experienced so much of that myself. Okay, so when I was doing this Bethel School of Prophecy, the beginning of August, I had a dream about my brother, my youngest brother, that really felt significant when I woke up. And it was so graphic, so vivid, and I couldn't figure it out. So I'm going to walk through it with you and show you how we would interpret it on a whiteboard. So the first thing that when you have a dream is you're going to, first of all, write down the date that it happened. So I'm just going to put a date on this whiteboard, August 5th. 2020. So you're putting the date at the top. And the reason you put the date with your dream is because you're going to want to, when you're thinking about a dream, you're going to want to think about what was going on in my life around that date. And there may be some circumstance that you were going through, or a struggle you were facing, a crossroads that can shed light on what that dream meant, especially if you're recalling a dream that was from maybe some years ago. To be able to think, what else was happening in my life at that time, can give you a clue as to what the dream means. And then you're also going to give your dream a title, which is the first step of interpreting what your dream could mean. So if you had to put your dream in just a couple words of what you think it means, you'd write it in a title. And so I'm going to call mine Vegetable Head. Vegetable Head. Okay, so you've got a title there. And then the next thing, like Rachel said, to pay attention to the feelings that you were having in the dream, you're going to ask, was this a positive experience or negative? Did I feel positive feelings in the dream or did I feel negative feelings? And it could be maybe you were experiencing joy, elation, happiness, excitement. Obviously, those are all positive. If you were experiencing fear, terror, loss, death, obviously that's negative. But sometimes it could also go positive to negative in your dream or negative to positive. So that's an option as well because the dreams can shift. So my dream was positive. And so I put that up in the corner because that's also going to help you interpret it. Not just if you're interpreting it for yourself, but let's say you have a friend or your child comes to you and says, I just had this dream last night. Let me tell you about it. And they start to tell you all the details, maybe because they want your help understanding why they had it. Right from the get-go, you want to pause them and say, wait, how are you feeling in this dream? Were you feeling happy or sad? Were you feeling joyful or were you feeling scared? That way they can tell you right away, oh, I was scared. Because my son has told me dreams before that sounded wonderful and so adventurous, but he said I was scared right from the beginning. So that helps me have a clue of what he's trying to tell me. So you've got the date, you've got the title, and then you've got the positive or negative feeling. So now you want to, in the middle, write the subject of the dream. And a lot of times the subject would be you, right? If you're the one experiencing the dream and you're actively involved in the dream, then a lot of times the dream subject is you. But if you're just observing it and it's primarily you watching someone else's life, then the subject could be somebody else in your life, right? And so for me, it's kind of unclear to me if the subject was me or my brother because we were both so actively involved in the dream. But I'm going to say that for this one, the subject was my brother. So I put Billy because I feel like the interpretation of the dream is primarily something about his life. And before I move on with this whiteboard, I'll just tell you the dream. That way we can then dissect it together. So what happened in the dream, and just a little background info so that it'll make sense to you if you don't already know me. I have two younger brothers. One's 5 years younger, one's 7 years younger. And the one that's 7 years younger is Billy. And he has had something like autism or some sort of brain damage since he was a toddler, really, really young. And so they say he has autism, but it's not like the super smart at math kind of autism. I would say he's not super high functioning. He could never live on his own. He's kind of like if you had a 2 or 3 year old friend who just was never mentally going to grow up, but yet he's, now currently in a 20-some year old body. So in my dream, I see Billy, and maybe in the dream he's about 8 years old. So he's a kid now. He's not in his 20s, but he's at a playground and he's with his dad, who's actually now in heaven, but in the dream his dad was still alive. And I happen to be walking by the playground and I look over and I see Billy coming. And I think, oh my goodness, my brother's here. And because my brother and I didn't live together ever since he was a toddler, his grandparents raised him. So I didn't know he was going to be at the park that day. I just bump into him. So I rush over to him, and I have a friend with me throughout this whole dream, but I've never seen her in my life, and she never actually speaks the whole dream. She just kind of is this present chick with blonde, straight hair, and she's just very peaceful. And so we walk up to Billy and his dad, and I just say, Billy, it's so good to see you. I give him a huge hug. And then I take a step back and look at him. And to my shock and horror, he has something wrong with his head. It's like he has some gaping holes on the side of his head with some vegetables growing out of it. And I'm sorry if that grosses you out. I wouldn't share it, except it's so key to understanding the dream. But he's got vegetables growing out. I can see broccoli for one, and squash and other things coming out. And then there were just places around his temple and around his head that his skin was corroding and deteriorating as though he had leprosy. And then also on his feet, because he was wearing sandals. And immediately I said to his father, Doug, I said, could I please pray for Billy? Let me come back with you and pray for him. And he said, sure. So we go back, and what was a little intriguing was we didn't actually go to their house. We went to a hotel room they were staying in. And so I come into their hotel room, and my silent friend is with me, and I lay hands on Billy's head, and I could just feel his flesh under my thumb, the flesh of his temple, and it was just soft under it, like putty, like Play-Doh, it was not intact. And so I put my hands on his head, and then I see the vegetables, and they're awkward, but I'm not grossed out because it's my brother and I'm so full of love for him. But I just simply gently try to press the vegetables back into his head, and they go a little bit, but they won't go all the way. And so I just give up on that, and I lay my hands on his head, and I say, in the name of Jesus, be healed. And immediately before my eyes, I saw the vegetables disappear, and the skin around his head completely just grows back, and it looks perfect and whole and beautiful. And I just think, oh God, you are amazing. Thank you, God, because when I prayed for Billy in my dream, I just knew God would do it. But I was doubly thankful because Billy's father was able to see that happen, and his father did not walk with Jesus. And so I thought, wow, his father will not be able to deny the power of Christ right now and the love of God. Maybe his father, because of this miracle, will come into relationship with God. And so then I'm about to get down on my knees and pray for my brother's feet, that the skin on his toes would also be healed. And as I was about to, his father stopped me and said, wait, before you do that, I think you need some distilled water for this. Why don't you go find some? And you're going to want distilled water when you pray for his feet. And in my heart, I felt like, I don't think that's necessary. That feels like a tangent. But to honor my stepfather, he was my stepfather, not anymore through marriage. There was a divorce there. But to honor this past stepfather and his relationship with his son, I'll try to appease him and go find some distilled water real quick. So the silent girl and I split up in the hotel, try our best to find distilled water, can't do it, and we come back, and I believe that I prayed for my brother's feet and they were healed anyway, but I honestly can't remember if I had the opportunity to pray for his feet as well or not, if we just got sidetracked by the water. And then the dream was over. And so I was thinking about that dream the whole next day, and I couldn't figure it out. I didn't have the tools yet that I'm about to teach you right here, so I just felt like, okay, God, I know you have revelation for this, that you actually are willing to give me because I'm asking you for it and believing you for it for the first time, because I didn't used to expect interpretation until now. And I actually typed out my dream on a Facebook chat within that school in case any of the other students had an idea of what the dream could mean. And I didn't have the chance to check it before I went to bed that night. But as I was having my bath before bed, I just said, God, I've waited all day to know what this dream means. I have to know right now. And I just start praying in the Spirit for about 5 minutes. And then I stop praying and I instantly realize what the vegetables mean. And you all, the vegetables were so significant to me. Like I had to know what the vegetables in his head meant, because I needed to know if I needed to take a step of action based on the dream. And my initial first thoughts were, well, maybe he needs better nutrition to help heal his autism, because I believe in that. And so our family eats very clean, and we eat a lot of whole foods. And so I thought, well, maybe I need to ship my brother some greens drink or something to help him get on the right path. Maybe he's not getting that in his group home. I bet maybe he's probably not. And then I thought, but wait a minute, the vegetables wouldn't fit in the head when I tried to put them back. So maybe that means that nutrition is not the answer. And so I really needed to understand what it meant to know what to do, if I was to do anything at all. And so I'm praying in the bathtub that night, and the Lord very clearly says, the vegetables signify how people see him. How when sometimes people who have brain damage, other people see them and say that they are in a vegetable state. And that was just like, whoa, okay. I didn't get that at all. Like, I've never thought of my brother as a vegetable because he's, he may not be normal, but he's beautiful and joyful and fun to play with. And so I've never thought of him that way. And then I asked God, well, what did his feet mean? And I felt like God said his feet mean his destiny, that his destiny was going to be set straight. His feet would be healed so that he could walk in his destiny. And so from that dream, I actually had a new level of faith that God could do something in Billy's life this side of heaven, that maybe he'll even have some sort of healing in his body or his brain that we had given up on long ago. And so the next morning, I went back and checked the chat where I had typed out the dream to see if anybody had any ideas of what it meant. And there was somebody who I didn't know in the school who said, this is just me taking a first stab at it, but here's what I'm hearing and thinking. And she told me the exact thing that the Lord had told me in the bathtub verbatim about people seeing him in a vegetable state and how God was restoring his dignity to him. And so that was amazing, you guys. I have not had that ever happen to me where I've had an idea of what my dream could mean and then somebody who doesn't even know me tells me the exact same thing. But it gave me such hope for the power of our dreams. So if you were interpreting that dream, you have the date, the title, the positive feeling, we have Billy, and so then you have the main person, the subject in the middle, and then around it, you're just going to put the subpoints or the sub-subjects. I forget what that term really is, and counter subjects. And for those you want to have, maybe there's only 1, 2, or 3, but you don't want to have more than 7 because you don't need it to be super complex. So I have myself here. I have the silent friend. I have the vegetables coming out of Billy's head. I have his dad. I have the hotel. I have his head getting healed through prayer. And then I have the water, the distilled water. Okay. So let's interpret what me means. Me means me. So that's really easy, right? Okay. So you're just going to start listing possible interpretations. All right. And then we look at silent friend. Do Kay or Rachel or anyone watching today, do you have any idea what the silent friend could have signified? Just type that in the chat if you do. And then I'll come back to that as you're typing. The vegetable head, we realized after getting further revelation, I wouldn't have been able to write this right away, but that the vegetable head meant that that was how people see him, like as a vegetable, like vegetable brain damage, right? Brain damaged. Yeah, so not just that he had brain damage, but that people are seeing him with that label. And then Doug symbolized, in this dream, he symbolized Billy's father. But when you have a father show up in your dream, Sometimes it could be literally your dad that it's symbolizing, but sometimes just keep in mind it could also mean your heavenly Father. And there's one more interpretation of this that I'm just thinking of right now, spur of the moment, that Doug in my dream also, I believe, represents people who don't know Jesus yet. So, okay, so people who don't follow Jesus, because this happened in front of him before his eyes. And then the hotel. So, do either of you have any idea what the silent friend could mean? And what also does the hotel stand for? Do you have any ideas about that? Type them in the chat, because it'd be really fun to see if we come up with some of the same thing. I'll skip ahead to the healed head. So his healed head, obviously, he's now restored. He's healthy. He's whole. So we're going to say restoration. God's power was so evident in the dream. God's power was the source of that. Dignity. Healing. Whether that's physical or spiritual, emotional, but there was healing. Healing. Okay. Rachel, you were listening but taking photos. Okay, well, I won't count on you for interpretation this time. You're an amazing woman. You're like uber multi-gifted, and I don't know how you do so many things at once. So, Kay, if you have any ideas of what these things mean, you're welcome to type them in the chat. If we get to the end and you haven't done it yet, I'll fill you in. But then the final thing was distilled water. And so what does the water mean? Does it mean literally go find a bottle of Dasani? Rachel, I seriously mean it, because I do not have the gift of multitasking. It's pretty bad. So distilled water, to me, when I prayed into it afterwards, to me it meant a religious ritual, which actually was not necessary. So maybe that means like, oh, we've got to go find the holy water, or we've got to go find the priest, or we've got to go say this many Hail Marys, or we've got to, have this tangible holy oil, anointing oil or something, like that. There's some sort of religious ritual that his father, Doug, wanted to add to the power of God and add to what God was already moving in and doing. And that if we get sidetracked by that and say, oh yeah, God healed his head with his power just by a simple prayer of asking, but if we want him to heal his feet too, then we better go like do this right and learn how to do this and ask the religious gurus. Then we could get distracted and we could miss out on the opportunity of partnering what God's doing in that very moment. Not to say that any of those things are bad or don't have their place, don't have, significance. They're important too, but the difference is God didn't tell me, go get the holy water or go get the distilled water. This person in the dream, Doug, told me to go find that. So it was a rabbit trail. So it's not about whether those things are right or wrong. It's what's God asking for in the moment, staying connected to hearing him and listening. What do you want to do, God, to bring this breakthrough? And then doing whatever he says. So then we have what the silent friend could mean and what the hotel could mean. So to me, I never would have thought this about any of my dreams, but in this particular dream, the silent friend, who I've never seen before in my life, doesn't remind me of anybody, but she was just ever by my side and supportive and just did whatever we need to do. She obviously cared about my brother and his healing. I feel like she was an angel. So she was an angel of the Lord sent there to be with me. Because that actually could have been really scary for me to go into a hotel room with my brother and his father, because his father was a very when under the influence of hard drugs, he was very violent and obnoxious, abusive, aggressive. So in normal life, I would never just go into a place with him without someone with me. But in the dream, I had zero fear of being alone with my brother and his father because this silent friend, the angel, was with me. So I wasn't alone. And then the hotel. You know, that's another detail that if I hadn't written it all down, I would have just overlooked that as like, oh, that's just weird. Like, I don't know why we didn't just go back to their house. I don't know why they were staying in a hotel. But when I wrote down all of these key things, I realized the hotel means something. And I believe that the hotel probably meant that this is not Billy's home. He has an eternal citizenship in another kingdom, which is, of course, heaven. So the hotel just means that this is a temporary, you all are going to find out if I can spell or not, temporary home. So right now, Billy only has a certain aptitude, a certain ability, but I think God wanted me to be reminded that he sees him very differently. And the Billy that we're going to know in heaven is going to be so beyond what we have the ability to know right now. And I'm so excited for that. So that's a very detailed example of how you can interpret a dream with one another. And I'm going to go ahead and erase it. Do you all have any questions about this process, about any of it at all? Is that fun? Is that helpful? Is that confusing? Would love to know it. And in the meantime, Kay, you said you've always had a fascination for owls. They're your spirit animal. I think one reason they appear is because they're there to comfort you when you have some really rough dreams. That's amazing that God's given you that symbol of his presence with you, of something to comfort you, that you're not alone when you're going through tough times. And that's so true of you right now, that you're not alone as you're going through the physical problems that you've had with your leg. You're not alone as you mourn your father no longer being on earth. You're not alone. Never, never, never. He's continually with you. Oh, Rachel, you said it was very helpful. That's why we pay you the big bucks. Thanks. Yeah. I can literally say we paid you to say that. But you're amazing. So we'll do another one of those in a little bit. But something that's fun about paying attention to our dreams is it starts to give us our power back. And so Kay talking about the owl being constantly present with you in your dreams, that sometimes they appear to comfort you when you have really rough dreams. It reminds me of my son. He's so much, sorry, I'm getting distracted for just a moment because Kay just reminded me that she had a gallbladder issue that she went through as well. Yeah, you've been through a lot, Kay. And God is bringing you to complete wholeness and healing. And we speak that over you right now, God, that anything in Kay's body that is not aligned the way that you designed it and the way that you intend for it to operate, that everything in Kay's body would come into proper alignment, that healing would be released even right now as we pray, God, that you would restore all the organs in her body and all of the vertebrae and all of the muscles and joints and ligaments, God, that everything would be made completely well on earth as it is in heaven, because sickness and pain and all of these things do not exist in heaven. And you say to pray, your kingdom come. And so, God, we pray your kingdom come, your will be done, and that her body be touched even today, right now, as we pray, God. Release your healing, Holy Spirit. Okay, I just believe for continued healing for you. Okay, so I was sharing with you about my little boy, Rockwell. He has so many dreams, you guys, and honestly, Many of them break my heart. I'm so glad that he shares them with me, though, and I'm so glad that I've gained these tools recently to help him process them, because he actually has a lot of demonic dreams and a lot of soul dreams that are disturbing, especially just for a precious little barely 6-year-old. And so to be able to analyze them together and figure out what's the root of these dreams, what's the root fear, and then to be able to call that out, because when you speak it out, it comes into the light and God's light shines on it and shows it for what it really is. Because remember, Satan is the father of lies. And so Satan's lies trick us sometimes. They feel true, but when they're called out and brought into the light, we can see them for what they really are. And so they can begin to be expelled and lose their power. And simultaneously, we can ask for God's wisdom of what can we replace those lies with? What is your truth? And so then we begin to meditate on what that truth is. And our hearts and our minds will be renewed and transformed so that those same dreams don't haunt us anymore, because they lose their power. And so with Rockwell, he shared a few dreams. I'll just tell you the gist of them. One of them, I actually fell into a pool and I drowned. And my daughter Juliet and my husband Mark were there, and Mark just took Rockwell and kind of laughed it off with him and basically said, like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like, we'll be fine, you know, God will use it for good, blah, blah, blah. And so Rockwell was deeply, deeply shaken by that dream, woke me up in the middle of the night crying, and it really made him sad for days, even though we prayed into it. So he had a dream that I drowned. Then he had a dream that he drowned. He fell off a ship and somebody tried to throw him an anchor and he couldn't reach it and he drowned. Then he had a dream that that we were with Juliet and we were walking, I think it was near his school, and there was some sort of river or creek that had like really clear water that you could see into. And this water had roaring lions inside of it. And for some reason, his joyful, energetic little 4-year-old sister didn't notice the lions that everyone else could see. And she went running straight into the water, and the lion devoured her, and she also died. So that was his dream about Juliet recently. I mean, this happened like last week. So we're walking through this together as a family. Like, this is real, this is fresh. And then he also had a dream that he was in a maze and his dad was behind him, and they're walking through this maze together. Maybe it's like a corn maze at Halloween or something. And he's a lot further along than his dad is. And for some reason, his dad just turns around and leaves the maze and leaves Rockwell. And so then Rockwell's in tears and he's all alone and he's stuck in the maze with no one to help him. And then he had another dream. This is the final dream that we were all sitting at church together, the 4 of us and our family. And we look up, and there are 2 screens at our church on either side of the stage. And he said that the screen slaver, which is a character from Incredibles 2, had taken over both of the screens. And so apparently, like, the screenslaver, this character, essentially the screenslaver tries to hypnotize people. And my son told me that also the screenslaver has people who work for him, and anyone who's not for him, his people will kill. And so the screenslaver comes on the screens of our church, and my son sees them, and he looks to us, to Mark and me, and we just immediately get up. We're like, no, we're not having this. We get up and leave, but we only take Juliet with us, and we left Rockwell behind before he could have the chance to follow us. So now he's left alone at church with the screenslaver on both screens, and he's just like feeling this deep sense of abandonment. And he goes over and he starts asking other families at the church if they'll adopt him, and then sits down with them. And so yeah, Kay, I see that you have to leave us for a moment, and that's totally okay to come in and out, because I know 2 hours is a long time, a generous time to spend with me today. And we're actually going to adjust the schedule in the future so that it's a shorter chunk of time throughout the day, and then hopefully actually add an evening option too that's going to be shorter. But all that to say, you are always welcome, and welcome back whenever you can come catch us again. And the hope is that these will always be recorded, so they'll be available for you to rewatch later. So some of my friends who can't make the whole thing will rewatch it after the fact and see anything that they missed. Okay, so as you hear Rockwell's dreams, obviously the theme is easy to pick up on. There's a whole lot of death, a whole lot of abandonment, right? And so whenever we looked at the dream together of, especially the one of the lions killing Juliet, right away, as Rockwell's sitting there on the stairs with me, he's in tears. It's 6 a.m. He's just woken up by this dream. And something that was really comforting to him was to actually interpret this dream together right away. And so I said, Rockwell, those lions in the dream, do they remind you of Satan? And he's like, yeah. And I said, remember that in the Bible it says that Satan roars and prowls around like a lion? Because he's not the lion. God is the powerful Lion of Judah. But Satan tries to look like God. That's why he's called an angel of light. He masquerades as something beautiful, but it's a trick. And so I said, the lion that ate Juliet, that represents Satan, right? Because the thief comes, Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? But Jesus came that we would have life and have it to the full. Immediately, Rockwell was able to say, yeah, I believe that that's Satan trying to scare me to believe that he's going to take Juliet's life. And so that was just a quick, simple, very simple, short interpretation of this is what the lions meant there. But it really helped him to see where this was coming from, and for him to be able to pray against that dream and say, I cancel that dream in the name of Jesus, and I speak life over my sister Juliet. I declare that her life is in the hands of the Father who loves her, that he promises that she is his, and that all of her days are numbered before one of them came to be. And so she is not at the mercy of Satan, who wants to steal, kill, destroy, but she's got a God who's got her in the palm of her hand. And so that helped him with that dream. But then you heard all the other dreams of him losing us, losing a parent, losing his own life, being left and forgotten, being abandoned. And honestly, you guys, I don't know why my son would feel like we would ever abandon him. I can't think of anything traumatizing he's been through in his life that could make him feel that way. But when I told my husband about these dreams, he immediately said, I wonder if he feels like I work too much, because my husband works from home, so Rockwell can always go upstairs and see Daddy, even if he's not downstairs with us. But maybe he feels like Daddy's not available sometimes because he can't stop working to give him his full attention. And that was not me telling Mark that this is what it means at all. I would not put that guilt on him, and I didn't hear anything like that when I was praying about what these dreams meant. But Mark felt very strongly like, I need to make sure that Rockwell feels seen and wanted. And so because of it, we started doing something a little bit differently as a family to try to nurture Rockwell's soul, because maybe these are soul dreams that show that Rockwell is afraid of abandonment, afraid that he doesn't matter, afraid that he's not as important as everyone else in the family. And so now, just starting last weekend, we started asking each of our children, what do you want to do tonight? Like, Rockwell, tonight's your night. You get to pick whatever you want to do tonight. We're going to say yes, like within reason, as long as we can. And so he could have picked going biking on the trails. He could have picked swimming across the street at the pool. He could have picked a movie or a board game or whatever he wants. And he immediately said, oh, I want to build art sculptures together as a family. So that's what the theme of the night was, because we told Rockwell, you are so important, you are so valued and seen, you matter so much to this family, and to honor that and remind you of that, we want you to pick the activity tonight. And so that was a fun way to help Rockwell. And hey, yes, this is totally live, Thorvir, so welcome. We're just chatting about dreams, and we're chatting about what they could mean and how to interpret them. And so if that's what you're interested in, you've landed in the right place. And if you have any significant dreams that you want to share at any point in this chat, feel free to do that, and we'll look at them. And so the final dream that Rockwell had that meant something to us, and Rockwell, I'm sharing a dream that my 6-year-old son had recently. And so I want to actually use the whiteboard to talk about what that means. And so we're going to write down the date that he had the dream. So this would have been September. It was probably about September 10, something like that, 2020. So we write down the date of the dream so that we know if something significant was happening in his life at that time. Honestly, I can't think of anything that would be, but we've got the date to track it. Then you're going to write down, did he feel positive or negative in the dream? And he actually felt negative most of that entire dream, filled with fear, with feeling abandoned, feeling like someone is a threat. And then we're going to write down a title for the dream, because that's our first step of interpreting the dream. And so we're going to say screenslaver. So screenslaver, I don't know. I don't have a great title for this. We'll just stick with that for now. And then we write down the subject of the dream. So who was the main person in the dream, who this dream is about? And in this dream, it was my son, Rockwell. Then we write down all of the sub-characters or subplot. And so we've got his family. We get that this is happening at church. We have 2 screens at church. So we're just going to call them the TV screens. They're not really TV screens. What are they? Projection screens or... So we've got those 2. And then... Rachel, I can't even think of what those screens are called. If you remember, just tell me, because the word is escaping me. And then we have the screenslaver showing up. And then we have the family leaving Rockwell without him. Leaving without him. Okay, and so if we were to interpret this dream together, we're just going to look at each little point. Remember, you only want to list 1 to maybe 7 points. You don't have to dissect every little thing in the dream and get bogged down, but you want the key things to be there. So Rockwell's family, we represent, I think, pretty clearly. We stand for us. We are his family, but family also stands for a place of belonging, a place of safety, a place of love, right? Even a place of identity. So Rockwell's sitting in that place initially, feeling secure, right? And we're at church, so you would think in the church, I don't think that the church literally means the actual church that we attend, but I would think that the church in this dream, given what I know about my son and what's happening right now, I would think that the church means just people in general who are seeking Jesus. So we'll just say followers of Jesus, or like the big church, capital C at large, followers of Jesus. Maybe the body of Christ, right? The body of Christ. So we're sitting there together. And then we've got the 2 screens at the church that are taken over by the screenslaver in his dream. And those 2 screens, the way that they're positioned in the top corners on either side, with the sanctuary right there, like the stage right there in the middle, and then there's a cross in the middle between the 2 screens. Something about that, if you could see it, if you've ever been to our church and could see it, those 2 screens look like eyes for some reason. That's just what's highlighted to me as I'm thinking about this dream. So I feel like these are like the eyes of our souls. And what's the purpose of those screens? Normally those screens, they have scriptures written on them. They have the lyrics of worship songs. And so they're supposed to have things on them that would encourage you. Welcome back, Kay. We're just checking out a dream that my son Rockwell had recently and what it means. So, so those two screens represent the eyes of our souls, what we're letting into our souls through our eyes by what we watch. And they're supposed to represent like encouragement, right? That's what they normally would bring. Encouragement. Okay. Then we have the screen slaver. Yeah, I think that's what it's called. If you've seen Incredibles 2, you would know. So the screen slaver, who would that represent in the dream? And oh, thank you, Thorvir, for saying that. I appreciate that. I hope so too. So then we have the screenslaver, which I would venture to say that would be the enemy. And so that would be Satan. Because the screenslaver's job is to take over the screens and hypnotize people, right? And people who are hypnotized aren't usually trying to be hypnotized. If you think about like the Sultan in Aladdin and how Jafar had the snake and was secretly hypnotizing him, he didn't know what was happening to him. He didn't even feel like he was in charge, but that's just what he was looking at. He was looking at the eyes of the snake and being hypnotized. So we have the screenslaver signaling or representing Satan and lies. And here I have one more little bubble to add. So this would be the screens once they're taken over by the screenslaver. So the screens possessed would be a word we could say. And what that seems to mean to me is that the idea that people today are so easily being entertained to death. So the screens are possessed, meaning that people can be, without meaning to be, people can be entertained to death. So I'm sure you can relate that sometimes we may feel like, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what my big purpose is. I'll just go binge watch on Netflix. Or, man, that sucks that I just got broken up with. Or that really hurts that my dad just passed away. Or whatever it is we're working through. Oh, I have so much stress, so much pressure from all these courses, all these exams coming up. I will just go numb out and play video games or watch, binge watch these TV shows. Or I will just go and, play hours and hours and hours of soccer. Whatever it is, it's easy for us to numb out to entertainment, and it's easier than ever before. Throughout all of history, I would venture to say that we can numb out the easiest. because we have the most expendable time of anyone. Even though we think we're busier than ever, we have the most choices around how we spend our time. It's not like we're churning our butter and kneading the dough and making our bread and uh, toiling over the soil and doing all the things that people used to have to do before the industrial age. So if we want to be, we can be distracted and entertained, right? And then the family leaving without Rockwell, leaving him there at church alone once we saw that the screen slaver had possessed the screens. And once again, to all my church friends watching this from our community church, I'm not saying that this is a dream about Community Church of Hendersonville, to be very clear. I'm saying that this seems to be representative of the church at large, that this is a danger we could face if we're not aware of it, to people in general. So what does it mean when the family walks out of the room without Rockwell? That obviously represents abandonment. For some reason, we could forget our own son and leave without him. So he's forgotten. He's not important. So maybe he's less important, is what the enemy would want him to think. So you could take a dream like this and run with it and say, how do we keep from being entertained to death? Is this a warning for us? I think so. But honestly, being the parents of Rockwell, the thing that we were the most concerned about and that my husband was the most concerned about was this. Why would Rockwell have reoccurring dreams that he's being forgotten and abandoned and left behind by the family members who love him? Because this kid is so loved. So why is that a fear in his soul? Or why is this specifically a strategic attack of the enemy toward him? And so this is what we are praying into, and this is what we're trying to reinforce in our son. And so because of Rockwell sharing this dream with us, we're able to proactively speak identity into him, change our schedules so that he feels loved and seen and important right now before this grows into a big thing and becomes his identity. And we're also able to help him renew his mind and fight, because Satan wants to throw all kinds of lies at us that feel true. And if we don't know that we can have a sword and fight him, then we just kind of feel like victims, like, oh, that hurts. Oh, that really does feel true. Oh, everybody does hate me. Oh, I'm not as important as my sister. Oh, like we could start to partner with these lies and just feel like there's nothing we can do. And every dream we have, it just beats us down further and further. But instead, with Rockwell, I was just driving him to school and I said, Lord, give me a verse. Give me a verse that I could teach him right now so that he could start fighting against this feeling of abandonment. And immediately I heard the words, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And I thought, awesome. Okay, I know that's in the Bible a few times. I'm not really sure what that exact reference is. But yes, Lord, I will teach him that. And so then I get to the gym just 30 minutes later. And I had just finished my swim and I'm sitting down upstairs on the track where I read my Bible and meditate, and I open it up and I'm reading through Joshua chapter 1. And right there in Joshua chapter 1, it says the exact verse that popped into my head earlier that morning, where it says, just as I was with Moses, in Joshua 1:5, it says, just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. And I thought, oh, thank you, God, for reminding me that that's the exact verse you want me to help my children memorize. So when I picked Rockwell up from school, I said, hey, here's the verse that we can memorize in response to these horrible dreams that have been happening. Because you guys know, like, we're not victims. Satan wants us to feel like we're powerless, but every dream, every bad dream he gives us is an opportunity for us to have a comeback. It's an opportunity for us to pick up a new weapon and reinforce our identity and fight back. And these dreams that are, being terrors to us can actually serve us and help us to be stronger than we would have ever been had Satan not messed with us. And I believe that eventually he's going to give up because he's going to realize that every bad dream he gives my son is actually growing my son and helping him to be the greatest warrior that he would have ever become, and very early in his life. So anyway, I share the verse with Rockwell, and immediately he comes up with a song, because that's how we learn scriptures in my family, is we put them to music right away so that we can't forget them. It just helps us learn things 100 times faster. So I read the verse to Rockwell as we're driving in the car, and he immediately comes up with this little tune, and he says, "I will never leave you or forsake you." And I thought, yeah, that's good. So from that whole horrible dream and series of dreams, now he and his sister, I wish you could hear them. They are like at the breakfast bar this morning. They were practicing taking turns singing it. And so you would hear this little tiny 4-year-old voice singing. She says, "As I was with Moses, I will be with you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I will never leave you or forsake you." Joshua 1:5. And then Rockwell sings it, and then she sings it, and they go back and forth. So already, you all, 2 days after reading this verse to them, they know it. It's stuck in their head all day long, and they're singing it every single day. And that is becoming Rockwell's true identity, not what Satan had said about him in his dreams. I was sharing that it's hard for me sometimes to talk so long without hearing or seeing your voice. But to clarify, it's not hard for me to talk a long time. I'm probably the queen of monologuing, and it's really fun for me. But what my heart's concern is, like, are you okay? Like, I can't read your face. I can't see if your eyes are glazed over. I can't see the body language of if you're getting it or if something's stirring inside of you. So thank you for continuing to communicate with me so that I can tailor the conversation to what would be most beneficial to you. But let's just ask God right now if he has any dreams that you've had that he wants to bring further revelation to. And by dreams, I mean like dreams that you've experienced that night when you're sleeping. So just go ahead and close your eyes wherever you are, unless you're driving, and just ask God right now, even if you don't know him yet, or wouldn't say that you're religious or anything like that. That's totally fine, but you can just, borrow my faith for a minute and pray with me right now, and ask him, just say, "God, is there any dream that I've ever had that you want to highlight right now so that I can understand it better, or that you want to bring to my memory so that I don't forget about it or miss the meaning?" And then just listen and see what pops into your head. Cool. So, as you listened, what did you hear? What dreams popped into your mind? You can type in the chat, say, "Yes, I thought of a dream," or "No, nothing happened," just to let me know where you are. And if you did think of a dream right away that you want to share in the chat what that dream was about, we're going to take some time to do that. So feel free to respond right now. And if you're listening at home or listening after, still do all of these exercises, because these are opportunities for you to just be silent with God and ask him what he wants to remind you of, ask him what he wants to say to you. And I think that if that's not your normal practice, you will be very surprised how much he's speaking and how much he wants to show you. Okay, cool. So that's totally fine, Rachel. So as I was, if you think of something, put it in the chat. And in the meantime, I'm actually going to share another dream with you that just now popped into my mind and interpret it with you all. So this was a dream that I had less than a month ago. So I wrote it down in my journal. let's see what date that was. It was August 27, 2020. So August 27, 2020. And I'll show you, I just keep a prayer journal where I write down, I don't know if you can see, but sometimes I'll just journal my thoughts, my prayers. I journal my dreams. So you can see, like, right here in my journal, I did the dream interpretation. And you can see me doing it right there in real time with the Lord. I feel like that's so helpful to have a history with him, so that you can look back and say, I feel like I'm doubting something right now. Like, did I really make the right career move? Or should I really have moved to Nashville? Or whatever it is, then you're able to look back and remember, God spoke to me this on this date, and he spoke it again on this date. It can be so reassuring that you're in the right place at the right time. And so we want to keep that history. So I have August 27, 2020. And the title of this dream is Carelessness. And it was a negative dream. And so I'll share the dream with you, and then we'll write it out. So what happened in the dream basically was I was with Mark and the kids at home, and it was bedtime, and I think Mark was going to tuck them in that night, but he had to rush off to something with work. And so instead he was kind of having me take over, and he was just like, oh yeah, you can tuck in the kids, and oh, you'll notice there's some CDs in the trash right there by the kids' bed. And they had been thrown in the trash by Mark because he had spilled water on them. And when I looked, it wasn't just any CDs. It was our CD, our album that he and I made together. And they're in the trash. And he said, yeah, you'll want to clean those up, grab those out and clean them up. And you guys, just so you know, this is nothing like how Mark is in real life. So he would never tell me what to do in real life. He's very sweet and kind and thoughtful. But in the dream, he was speaking to me this way. And when he told me that, like, I was going to comply. I was going to tuck the children in and take over. And a lot of times I do clean up a lot of messes that aren't mine. But this time in the dream, I said, no, you do it yourself. I got so mad. And so then the dream immediately switches scenes, and now we're in a movie theater. And so the weird part of that was, instead of sitting next to Mark, because I would normally want to sit beside him and hold his hand, it was me, and then beside us, one of our team members in our company, Brave Enough, one of our team members named Benjamin was sitting beside me, and then next to Benjamin was Mark. And so apparently it was supposed to be like a date for Mark and me, but we had brought along Benjamin. And so we're obviously not holding hands, because that would be awkward, reaching across Benjamin to hold hands with one another. But Mark was still trying to be like sweet and attentive and show, physical touch, because that's one of my love languages. And so he was like reaching over Benjamin, taking my feet, trying to give me a foot massage. And it was so awkward, because I'm thinking, like, Benjamin's feeling like a third wheel. This is not appropriate. What is Mark thinking? Why is he being overly, like, just optimistic and clueless? I don't get this. And furthermore, as Mark would try to massage my feet, he couldn't reach them well, obviously because Benjamin's in the way. And so he stands up in front of Benjamin, now with Mark having his back to the movie theater screen, and he's blocking Benjamin's view of the movie, trying to massage my feet. And I just jerk them down, and I'm just like, we're not doing this right here. This is messed up. So I look at the dream and I say, okay, who is this dream about? And so I think this dream is about me, and it's also about Mark, really our marriage. So we put that in the middle, and then we start to list the counter subjects, or the sub-points. And so maybe I'm just going to say this dream is about me, because it's really all through my lens, my eyes. So we have me, then we put Mark over here, and we're going to say we have CDs in the trash with the water spilled on them. And then we have me telling, we have the kids at bedtime. Then we have me telling Mark, no, I will not clean up that mess of the CDs in the CDs in the trash and retrieve them for you. You do it yourself. So me telling him no. And then we have the next part of the dream, which is the movie theater. So we're at the movies. And then we have Benjamin from Brave Enough sitting between us. Benjamin, if you ever see this, you're not allowed to feel guilty. This is just be assured that it doesn't stand for you. It's not you. And then we have the awkward foot massage. Okay. Are we having fun yet? Rachel says, dreams can be strange. You are so right, Rachel. And you know what? Like, not to be ultra spiritual about this and think that every single dream means something, because maybe it doesn't. But prior to gaining these tools of interpretation, I would have just had that dream and been like, I feel funky now that I've woken up. And this all happened in the dream, and like it would bother me, and I would pray myself out of it, but I wouldn't have stopped and analyzed what the dream could mean. I would have just thought it was just a bunch of mumble jumble. And so actually sitting down with the Lord later that day and saying, what does this mean? Is this trying to tell me something? I found out a lot. So in the dream, Mark stands for himself. So Mark, my husband, my best friend, my lover. The CDs in the trash that were actually our CD that we made together. To me, that felt like, and they were in the trash because Mark had spilled water on them. So to me, that felt like careless neglect of our marriage. And like careless neglect would be the water being spilled on them. Careless neglect of our marriage. And just to warn you, if this feels like it's getting heavy, I love my husband and he loves me, and we're doing really well. We're actually better than we've ever been right now. Thanks to just stopping and pausing and looking at where we are and where we want to be and what we need to do to get there. And so it's not going to get too heavy. It's okay. Careless neglect of our marriage would be the water spilling on the CDs. And the CD itself, that So Long solo album that we produced together, to me felt like our dreams together, our together dreams. Not just his dreams or my dreams, but our together dreams, because we were a duet doing it together. Okay, and then we have the kids at bedtime, and to me that represents family, and bedtime is a really sacred time because that's usually when I sing scriptures with the children, and they memorize more of them as we sing them to sleep, we meaning me, but it's also a time when I speak identity into each of the kids, remind them who they are, and I pray prophetically over them of who they're becoming, and also pray for protection for their dreams. So it's a really special time. So kids at bedtime would symbolize like our sacred family. And remember in the dream, Mark was supposed to tuck them in, but then he like had to work, so he's like passing the baton, like, oh, you do it, you know, not really getting the sacredness of the moment. And then me saying, no, I'm not going to just tuck them in and clean up the mess of the CDs where you spilled the water. That's me having a voice, right? Me basically saying enough is enough. So this is me and my limit. So that's the first part of the dream. And I'm going to go ahead and do the whole thing because it all works really well together. So the movies, yeah. Do you all, Rachel, if you want to jump ahead of me, if you have any ideas of what the movies mean, what Benjamin could mean from Brave Enough, what the foot massage means, you can type that in the chat and we'll see if we come up with the same things. But I'll resume with the movies. So the movies meant that we were on a date. We were supposed to be on a date between Mark and me. So like a romantic date. And then Benjamin. So Benjamin doesn't really represent Benjamin. Like, we've never been to a movie with Benjamin. He's been over to our house for a meal with other friends. But he doesn't stand for himself at all in the dream. He actually represents our company, Brave Enough. So, Brave Enough / work / Mark's dream. And that's not to say that I'm not supportive or that I don't pray into all the things that happen with Brave Enough or see what God's doing in it. It's just not a dream that was birthed in me. It was really birthed in Mark's heart. And it's really his baby, so to speak. Maybe it's becoming both of our baby more, but that's just kind of the way that it went down. Was we went straight from touring together as a team to I'm in charge of the kids in the house and investing in our church and relationships, and he's in charge of Brave Enough Artist Agency. So then we have the final thing, the foot massage. And so that's supposed to maybe represent connection or intimacy with Mark. So our romantic connection. So in this dream, what this dream actually spoke to me was so instrumental in me realizing where my heart was and where the health of our marriage was and what we needed to discuss. And then it gave us some kind of red flags or just warning lights. Like if your car has that warning light that comes on, like, my tires are low, I didn't know, okay? Like we have to pay attention to those warning lights. So this showed me that obviously the dream's about me and my heart, my soul, and I would call this a soul dream. I don't think that it was necessarily a dream from God. It could have been, but it's telling me, giving me a clue of what my soul is feeling. So Mark stands for Mark. The CDs in the trash stand for our dream together, and kind of the dreams that I'm connected to. I just felt like in this season around August 27, it felt to me like my dreams didn't matter as much, and launching more speaking through Twitch and whatnot, I had not felt 100% supported by my husband doing those things, even though he said that he was on board, and even though he said that he believed in me more than anything. His actions, because he was so consumed with his commitments with his work, to me didn't feel like he was supportive. And we've talked about that, so this is nothing behind his back that he doesn't know. So I just didn't feel like I had the support of his time to discuss things with him, for him to be a sounding board. He's very helpful in developing businesses and helping people figure out their dreams and their steps and all that, and he just didn't have time to do that with me for like a year. And so I was feeling like neglected and like my dreams don't matter. We're just going to throw this in the trash and dump water on it. Like that's how it felt. And then the kids at bedtime, I was feeling like Mark wasn't able to be like available and present for the kids and be equally invested in them. No was my limit, like me saying like, no, you spilled water on this. This is your mess. I'm not going to clean this up. I'm not going to overcompensate. I'm not going to be over responsible for us right now. I want you to actually take ownership of spilling the water on the CD, please. And then the movies. So yeah, so you can see that first half is feeling like me feeling neglected. Hey, Vishal Tyke, welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us again. So we're only on for about 6 more minutes, but you're welcome to replay if you want to. We've had a really fun time of just diving into the meaning of dreams and how to interpret them, and that's what I'm doing right now. Just showing a dream that I recently had and what it spoke to me about our marriage and how to make our marriage healthier. So this dream that I had about Mark and myself, in the second half of the dream, we were at the movies. There was Benjamin sitting between us. Benjamin stood for brave enough for our company. And so obviously I'm feeling jealous. I'm feeling like, okay, even when we're on a romantic date, do we have to bring brave enough with us? Like, can we talk about something else and think about something else? I was feeling resentful, like I didn't have Mark's full attention and affection because he was trying to do too many things at once. And then he was reaching over Benjamin, who stands for brave enough, and trying to give me a foot massage and put on the, to project the image that we're great, we're connected, we're a team, like we're romantically connected, but the truth is, like, it's just awkward because there's this company between us, and he's actually not serving the company by trying to give me a foot massage there at the movie with our company there. Because, like, nobody wins. The company can't watch the movie. They can't enjoy it because he's trying to attend to me and our emotional connection. And I can't enjoy the foot massage because I can't relax because there's this wedge between us. So this was so good for me to take a look at and to begin discussing this with Mark, because it's just good for us to say, like, okay, not all of our dates can be us chatting on the back deck talking about the company and how to serve it, how to grow. And that's easy for us to do because we both love the people in our company. We love the heart, the mission. We love what God's doing through it. We believe it's a God dream. But I feel like that my soul was telling me, like, we need some breaks where we don't think about that. And so as a response, since this stream, Mark and I now are going every Tuesday night to play Ultimate Frisbee together. We obviously won't be talking about the company when we're playing Ultimate Frisbee. Which, if you don't know what Ultimate Frisbee is, it's basically like if you imagine playing football with a Frisbee, that's kind of what it is. So we are so excited about that. And then we were, of course, able to talk about these things, about how I felt neglected, like my dreams were thrown in the trash. And then Mark cares because he's a loving husband. He doesn't mean for me to feel any of these ways through his behaviors. And so we've worked out a solution so that I can have access to a little more of his time, and I can also give him more support in ways that I wasn't before directly supporting Brave Enough. So it's crazy how this goofy dream that I almost would have just flushed, like I wouldn't have even recorded it in my prayer journal because it was so bizarre, that by doing this with it, it actually gave us action points on how to improve our lives and our marriage and help me not be resentful. Help me to even discover what's happening in my heart. Yeah, Rachel, I'm excited. So Rachel commented on the Ultimate Frisbee. So our first date for Ultimate Frisbee is tonight. I'm so thrilled. So thank you for being excited for us. We are too. All right. I'm so thankful, Rachel and Kay and Vishal Tyke, that you could join us today. It is honestly the best, most favorite part of all of this for me is getting to connect with you, hear what's going on in your life, get your feedback and participation, and pray over you. And I just believe that God is working mightily in all of your lives. I would love to have you back and hear how God is moving in your life and what you've seen since we prayed together today. Believing for amazing things and amazing breakthrough for all of you. And bless you today. Shalom.
The winter only lasts so long. Oh, one day love will make it fall. I never thought I'd come out caught up in the middle of love.